So my family history here in Jacksonville, well, not in Jacksonville, my great grandmother grew up in DeLand, Florida, and that's as far as that I can. I even asked like my family members, how far can we go back? Can we go beyond DeLand? So DeLand and Sanford, Florida, pretty much where my roots start, from what I can remember.
Huh. That's a good question. My family history that I have been aware of since I was a youth, probably I'd say 150 years. And every year it seems like I discover new things about the family and the name I inherited, Jones. So I'm constantly learning about that family history, and the more I learn about it, the older it becomes. So I'm still finding out about my family history and lineage. This year in 2020, I discovered about 13 family members that I never knew that are directly related to my great-grandfather. So me and my twin sister, we had just discovered, and the members of inside of our family, my brothers and sisters, we discovered this whole other part of the family that related to my grandfather. So yeah, it's a long, we're finding out daily about our own family history. We discovered each other through Ancestry.com, how we're all related to my great-grandfather, and we're just getting to know each other and meet each other in 2020.
So my dad's family, we can trace back several generations. His cousin did a lot of the footwork in the early 2000s, and my brother-in-law has since taken it over. My mom's family, I know, goes back, she is second generation American, so I guess 2 generations back, and both sides of her family are from Sicily. My dad's mom is from Poland, and his father, I guess, is 8th generation American in New York.
I can trace my family history maternally, mostly to my grandmother. Okay, actually to my grandmother's and my grandfather's parents. So I know my great-grandfather's name. I don't know my great-grandmother's name. I know her middle name. And after that, I don't have really any concrete information. It's just a bunch of stories. But my parents didn't ask a lot of questions apparently, and so I don't know a lot when I ask them the questions. But I do know my great-grandfather's name's Egbert, which was strange, but Egbert Rainey, and my grandfather Lovett Rainey, and I know my grandmother Velma Rainey, and Velma Turner Rainey, and her mother's middle name was Pharisee. And that's as far as I go.
If I was really trying, I could probably trace it back further. But really all that I know is that my mother is from Scotland, and my grandparents, born and raised, they came, their family came over from Ireland. And my father's family, for the most part, has lived kind of the south of America, but in America, in the South.
So through practical means, such as census records, I've gotten as far back as like 1730, about 1737.
Not too far. The furthest I can trace it back is that I have relatives in Georgia, southern Georgia, like Cordele, Georgia. And I have a couple of people that have made reference to family members being in New York, so not really far. And at first I was very, very, embarrassed to say that. But then I noticed that it was a fairly common thing. Not saying that it's a good thing, but it is a very common thing. So not very far.
I actually can't trace my family history back very far. Probably about 4 generations or so have lived here in Jacksonville. And I know that I do have some family in various parts of Georgia. So maybe about another, that 5th or 6th generation. But beyond that, I really don't know a lot about my family history.
Okay, so as far as how long my family history can be traced back, I'm not super familiar with the full-on lineage. So on my mother's side, she has 13 brothers and sisters. So she is one of 13. So that was a big family. So that's a lot of aunts, a lot of uncles. And as far as going back further beyond that, I'm not super familiar with that. I did never meet my grandfather on my mother's side. And then on my father's side, that actually, they are originally from Virginia. So some parts, I think my grandfather on that side actually came from Philadelphia. And again, I never met him, but yeah, so at least to my knowledge, it remains in the States, but I think some heritage goes back in a lot of different ways, yeah.
So both sides of my family are immigrants. My mom's side of the family is Scottish and Asian Indian. As far back as I can trace it is my great-grandparents, my great-grandma Rosalind, and I'm not sure what my grandfather's name was. And on my father's side, I can trace it all the way back to the early days of slavery because he is from Turks and Caicos Island.
I can trace it back all the way to the Kingsley Plantation, which is close to Amelia Island.